least when it comes to the US context, what I tell people is always do your own research, because if you go on the CDC website and State Department website with all of the information they have, it can be really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they tend to give you a ton of things that you may not necessarily need, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say you may not necessarily need all of them. So what I advise people to do is get the list of wherever it is they're going. Once they know where they're going, go ahead and look at the list, print out what they suggest, but then go and speak with your primary care physician or your specialist or both and make a decision, an informed decision, because there are so many vaccines that are recommended. And a lot of them, people don't realize, they just think, oh, I'm going to travel, and they don't take into account the time frame
Mm-hmm.
that's between one vaccine to the next, and also if there's more than one phase. So there may be three, of one particular vaccine in three phases. If you're doing it a month in advance, you may not have enough time to
Yep.
do all three prior to even traveling. So that's something I just want to keep people
Yeah.
abreast of. Also, I'll say that on the medical tourism front, as far as vaccines, a lot of people are traveling for vaccines that are specific to UTIs. If they have recurring urinary tract
Mm-hmm.
infections, there are vaccine and treatments that are not available in the US that are available in other countries where it's been used for a long time. And then also a vaccine for cancer, which was developed in Cuba. And
Mm-hmm.
that in particular is there's a lot of talk about it, but it's not to prevent cancer. It's if you have cancer, people are taking the vaccine, and it tends to identify certain cells and stop them from growing, so it can eliminate the advancing of the cancer, which helps people. So
And
those are the two things that I see people traveling a lot for lately.
okay, well, I'm going to circle back to a couple of those things that you brought up, but I want to slide Dr. Motley in, our resident pharmacist of the show.
Oh
All right.
yeah, I'm here. I mean, so this is a great time really to talk about vaccines because it's time for kids to go back to school. We want to make sure that our children are protected in the classrooms. A lot of times when you hear about the outbreaks throughout the US or anywhere really, it happens and it impacts those who have not been vaccinated at all. So when your children have the protection that they need, they don't have to worry about any of those vaccine preventable diseases because they're good to go. And a lot of times, depending on what state you live in, they have to have certain um, vaccinations in place in order to go to school anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is a great time to be having this conversation and addressing concerns. I know there are longstanding concerns with for vaccinations, immunizations, and those were heightened during COVID, obviously, for very relative and substantial reasons, like
Mm-hmm.
substantiated reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to work through that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of what came through with the resistance or the hesitation regarding COVID because it was just so new and we just didn't know,
Yeah.
and it was scary. It was
Yeah.
scary. So, we could not judge people for not wanting to get the vaccine. It was completely understandable. And so having to work through that and helping people to get the information that they need to make informed health decisions is
Mm-hmm.
really what we as healthcare providers should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so many things when it comes to vaccines. Dr. Motley, can you give us a little history about vaccines, or even what are some of the most popular ones that are considered, specifically here in Pennsylvania, what are considered mandatory that you're aware of?
So all the childhood vaccines that are recommended by the CDC are required for school-age children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Vaccines came about, and I mean, they have really done a lot to expand our lifespan here on Earth as humans. back in the day when, before vaccines were developed, people died at young ages because of infectious diseases. And then over time, vaccines became developed, which which helped to limit the spread of and eradicate certain infectious diseases. Smallpox is one of them. Smallpox was eradicated in 1980. And so if you were born after then, you haven't heard anything about smallpox because it's not around, because enough people got vaccinated that it could not spread anymore. One other one that we used to hear about a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, but 20 years ago, was chickenpox. People having chickenpox. We used to, see a lot of chickenpox around. I even had chickenpox, and when I went to pharmacy school and I learned about the chickenpox vaccine, I was like, why did my mom get me vaccinated? So I started looking and asking questions, and I realized that when I had the chickenpox, the vaccine was not available yet. It hadn't been discovered yet. So I had let her off the hook. I had let her off the hook. I was like, why I had to suffer with chickenpox when it was a vaccine available. So, but you don't hear about people having chickenpox like that anymore. And because of the vaccine, because we, have been protecting our kids, it can't spread. Now, you may hear of some pockets of some outbreaks that happen, and again, that typically impacts people that have not been vaccinated, and it typically happens when people come from countries that don't require vaccination, and they travel here, and then they're exposed to other young people whose parents decided to not vaccinate them. Then they don't have the same protection that they used to have when like all their other friends were vaccinated. And so you may see some pockets of outbreaks, but it's not common. It happens, but thank God most of us are protected, and it's not too common.
Yeah. Dr. Ramontal, I saw you raise your hand when she said chickenpox.
I think I had the same thing happen. One of my older brothers caught chickenpox, and my mother put all of us in the same room with him, so we would all be infected at the same time. Yeah, she was just like, "There's no way one is going to recover, and then I have another one," and it's just this effect. So yeah, I think it's important to also share that it's there's age appropriate minimum requirements also for some vaccines. So that's something to think about. Whenever you have a child and it's time to get a vaccine, they have one for age this, age that, and then or the first phase is this 6 months, then 3 months later, etc. So being mindful of that too, age requirements.
Yeah. Brother Moja, I know you have I had a chickenpox experience. I did not get chickenpox until I was 23 or 24, somewhere around there. I think it was, 22, 23. I was teaching, and I was living in Houston, and I came home, and as soon, I just remember there was a baby crying next to me on the plane nonstop. And usually I don't have an issue with that, but this cry was a different type of cry, not like an ornery, my ears are bothering me, I'm restless. It was something else, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And I remember going to the mall with my mom to do Christmas shopping, and I had a sweater on, and I literally just scratched my shoulder, and I said, "Ow." And she turned and looked at me, and she said, "You better not have chicken pox." And I was like, why would you even say that to me? And when I went home, it was like, and spent the whole Christmas break in my room. And luckily it just stayed, like above my waist. But nonetheless, I could not believe it. And when I went back to work in Houston, I said to my fifth grade class, I was like, "Who gave me chicken pox?" All their hands went up. I was like, "Y'all are not funny." So, but I always think it was that baby, because other than that, I had no exposure, and none of my students had it. But it was just the oddest thing. I'm like, I made it through my whole childhood and teenage years with nothing, and then boom, here we go. And I don't know if I had the vaccine or not. I'd have to check with my mom. So, all right, Brother Mojo, I know you have your
You
chickenpox
probably.
story. I
My
probably
chickenpox
didn't.
story?
Hmm.
I don't have a chickenpox story.
I thought Carlton did.
Well, Carlton's mother caught chickenpox while she was pregnant with him.
Mhm.
And she got it because this lady was very inconsiderate and came to her baby shower, and she had chickenpox and she came to the baby shower. And by the time we found out
Mm.
she had chickenpox and we sent everyone out, sent everyone home, I was furious. She was furious. My wife, my son's mother was extremely furious. And then like a week
Wow.
later, she got the chickenpox, and they put her into a early labor too. So Carlton was born exactly 1 month
Mm.
early because of that. And then they kept him in the hospital for 1 month, and they gave him a shot of something called gabaglobin, something like that. And so he was in the, but his mom had chickenpox from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet,
Mm.
and she couldn't touch or see him for like 2 weeks or something like that because I used to go to the hospital to feed him every night after I left work. The nurses was really cool. I guess they didn't want to make this black man angry. So
And I,
they used to let me come in. I used to get off work like 11:30 at nighttime. I was working second shift, and I used to drive to the hospital to feed my son, spend some time with him. And they were really cool. They let me come in, and he was the only African American on the ward. So I had to put a mask on and all this stuff on and go in. They had him in a room by himself, just be precautionary reasons.
Mhm.
And so that went on from, I still remember he was born on a Monday. He stayed in the hospital until Saturday morning. It was kind of really cool for me as a black man. I was walking my son to the car with the nurses, making sure everything had to come out. At that time, I know they still do. They came out to the car to make sure I had a baby seat in the car. Okay, this is what 1991 when he
Mhm.
was. I don't know if they still do that, but they wanted to make sure you had a baby seat in your car. So they came out, and I was like walking through the hospital with him, and I was like the only African American one. And they were looking at it was looking, and it always remind me that perceptions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But then I took him home, and his mom, she had it for a while, and she couldn't breastfeed, and she couldn't do anything because of that. So
Mm.
it just reminded me, like, people have to be really aware and be thoughtful of other people, especially if they're pregnant.
Yeah.
Like I said, he was born a month early because of that.
I
Yeah.
mean, to your point of the consideration, and hopefully Dr. Motley will be able to join us. Like I said, she's dealing with some technological difficulties. During the COVID vaccine, the height of it, she did a lot of vaccine hesitancy panels and so forth. And we did one panel with a gentleman, and at the beginning of the panel, he was anti vaccine. He was not doing it and so forth. And by the end of the panel, he had signed up to go get a vaccine because what shifted in him was he was thinking about it for himself. What he hadn't considered was the precautionary measures of other people, specifically one of his elders, like his grandmom. And he was like, I have to do it not for me so
Just
much,
for them.
but I have to keep this from happening to her. And I spend the most time with her. And I said, I'm in the same position because I take care of my mother, who's an elder. And so her system is not as strong as it used to be. And, regardless of my thoughts and beliefs about it, I can't pass it. I'm not taking that chance to pass it on to her. And so whatever we need to do, and as a family unit, that was what we decided to do. And at that point, I even had an assistant who was not interested in getting the vaccine, but she was helping me care for my mother. And so she was like, I can't take the risk of exposing her. So let me go ahead. I was talking about the vaccine hesitancy around COVID and so forth. If you want to chime in on some of that, Dr. Motley.
yeah, I was actually going to pick back up on that pregnancy and
Yes.
getting exposed to a vaccine during pregnant. What we do know, particularly with COVID, is that when pregnant women get COVID and they don't have the vaccine, they are
Mhm.
at um, incredibly high risk of having complications during their pregnancy, compromising the baby, compromising um, the mom's health. There is a higher risk of having to be admitted into the ICU when you're pregnant and you get COVID. And so there is a big push. I don't see enough of it, but there's a big push to make sure pregnant women are protected with the COVID vaccine. And I know, there women are afraid because they're like, I don't know what it's going to do to my baby, and
Right.
and I understand that. But what happens when you're pregnant and you get a vaccine? The vaccine does not get to your baby. You make the antibody. So this is how vaccines work, particularly COVID vaccines and many vaccines. They help you make the antibodies you need, the defense you need to fight the infection if you ever get it. So when you're getting the COVID vaccine, it's creating a protein that looks like real COVID, but it's not real COVID. It just looks like real COVID to trigger your body to make the antibodies or the defense particles to fight COVID virus if you're really exposed to it. So when you're pregnant, you get the vaccine, it triggers your body to create those antibodies that cross your placenta to protect your baby. So no part of the vaccine is ever getting to the baby. It's just the antibodies that you create that crosses the placenta to get to the baby. So it's like the food you eat, the water you drink, that all crosses the placenta to get to the baby, to nourish the baby. The vaccines are working the same way. It's just, you just got to get the antibodies in your system, in your body, and to your baby to protect your baby too.
Interesting. Dr. Ramontal, you want to chime in?
No, it's really helpful that you're bringing that up because honestly, even the story about the baby shower and chickenpox, what I found is that with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, I feel like vaccines were never really an issue or something a topic of a conversation with family, friends, whoever. And not until the pandemic, I like it actually kind of split people. Much like how when you talk about politics or religion, it became
It
taboo.
was very political.
Because it's a personal decision, it's a choice, right? And in many ways, people are only thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about others that they are connected to, whether it's by blood or just by relationship. And so those who I know who chose not to be vaccinated, I actually had my child at the beginning of the pandemic. He was born March 25th, 2020. So it was like 2 days they shut down everything, and I was in the hospital with my husband, and they almost didn't let him come in.
Oh my goodness!
It was just us, and they were like, "We don't know what this is. No one can tell us. You can't come." So when I left the hospital, I kept that mindset. Oh, this is my baby. I don't know. You're already like that anyway about a newborn, but it was to another degree because we just didn't know what this was. And my father actually retired from. He was a manager of selling used cars at a Nissan dealership. And he was like number 8 in the nation for selling. And I went home to his house, to my parents' house, because something had happened at my home, a flood or whatever, and we had to go home to his house. And I was just like, I can't bring the baby there because of your work. Like, you talk to so many people and shake hands, and you got to be in a car to let them test drive. He retired, and he has not returned to this day for my little boy. He's like, that's my retirement plan right there, that little boy. And they have a special connection because in the house every day he was taking him from me and having his little time. And so it's interesting because it really brought up a lot of feelings. And me being in healthcare, I did try to help educate my friends who were apprehensive about it. But in some cases, they still chose not to. And I respect their choice, but I find it interesting how others may not respect your choice if you choose to take it. Because what I found is I was like, okay, well, I can't have you come visit my baby. I'm sorry. And that, I know it hurt feelings, but I wasn't willing to compromise the possibility of my baby's health or my own health. Maybe you give it to me and then I give it to the baby. I don't know. So
Mhm.
that brought a lot of issues up during that time.
Mhm.
Oh, hurt those feelings, girl.
It was hurt. Listen, my sister did not hold my baby that was born during COVID until he was 9 months.
Wow.
Because she
Oh.
worked in a hospital. She wore the mask in the hospital, but she came home and I was like, you got to wear a mask. If you glove up, I will give you the baby. She wore a full suit and it was 9 months later and I was in the house. So I'm sorry. It's you or me, and it's going to be, that's my decision. You want to hold your nephew? Go ahead, but abide by my rules.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
That
had to
sounds
take it because it was
that
scary.
sounds that
You
sounds like
had
Jamaican. That's like
Good. Agreed. Yes, that's Jamaican.
that's Jamaican boy. That's a real Jamaican.
I am not gonna have that. And that's the thing. Here's the thing. I do respect people who choose not to take it, but there's
Mhm.
consequences to every decision. My
Mhm.
consequence is for taking it is maybe people look at me differently, but I took it. And your consequence is, well, I can't really have you in my home. I have 3 young children, and I can't take a chance like that. Because at the end of the day, what are you gonna do? Tell me sorry? And that's
Yeah.
it?
Right. Right.
Sorry.
I mean,
Okay, sorry while I'm taking care of 3 kids that I don't even know what it's going to do to their system.
Yes.
And at that time, it was brand new. We didn't know what
Yeah.
we didn't know, what we know now.
Mhm.
yeah,
so
even at the care center, our animal care center, we told people they had to have a mask and had gloves on, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
some people didn't want to, and I was like, you can't come in.
Wow.
Mhm.
It's like you can't
Mhm.
because the consequences is so great. Just doing that action to limit and to limit that consequences, to limit that action is just it's so minimum.
Mhm.
It even though you don't want to do it, it's like think about the people around you.
Right.
And
Mhm.
I just thought I said I respect what you're saying, what you don't want to do, but because of your decisions, then I have to do this.
Mhm.
And I need as I respect your decision, now
Right.
respect my decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's it. Simple as that. There's nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
That's delusion in me coming out.
That's it. Wait. Wait. I want Dr. Ramontal to say it like she said it because I'm sure she said it with an accent. I know she wasn't coming off the.
Oh,
She
I've
had a
been doing
troop.
that
No,
my
she
whole
had
life.
troops in there first.
I know she had the troops in there. I know there was some.
I did. I was just like, you got to touch who? My Pitney? No, no, no.
Oh, we went to the
I did.
picnic,
I
didn't
did.
we? We went
It
to.
was a thing. It was a thing, but I didn't like how it felt, but at the same time, my husband and I were in agreement, and I could not imagine saying yes and then
Mhm.
something happened and turning to my husband too, who is, we're a unit. We're
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
unit, so we
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
be in agreement. And I would rather be cautious, especially when it comes to the children,
Yes.
than to just take a chance because you don't feel comfortable about it.
Yeah.
And then the thing was, they weren't willing to wear a mask either.
Mhm.
So you're not going to get vaccinated. Okay, that's your choice, but you're
Mhm.
not going to wear a mask
Whatever.
either. Well, you can't come to my home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
You know,
simple.
it's interesting you said
So
because
let me just show. Look, Deidre
today,
said, "I'm loving this topic."
today, as he's saying this, today, this lady came in. She had her
Today,
dog
babe. Today.
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 This
Okay.
lady came in because what happened when she had her dog there a couple weeks ago, and when they left, I couldn't find the leash. The leash was downstairs. I just didn't look the right place where I put it. But she came back to return our leash, and she said, "Thank you so much." She said, "I came from vacation and I couldn't pick the dog up because I had COVID, so I stayed home. I had my brother come and pick the dog up."
Mhm.
And so she came in today to give me back my leash and pick up her leash. And that's what she said. She said the reason I did. She said the reason I didn't come is because I had COVID.
Mhm.
She went somewhere in South America and she caught COVID, and she
Mhm.
came back. So she had to isolate herself, whatever the requirements is now. So
Mhm.
she was really cool about it. She didn't come in and get the dog. She sent her brother to come and get the dog and stuff like that. So she came by today, and that's what she was telling me today.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I still wear a mask when I go out. Not everywhere. If I'm going to exercise outside, I don't
Mhm.
do it, right? But I wear one when I go to the grocery store, when I go to get my hair done, things like that. And people have asked, "Well, you still wearing the mask like that?"
Mhm.
I have a mother-in-law that's immunocompromised. She's
Mhm.
battling cancer. And I would hate to be the person that brought something in
Yeah.
that
That's right.
affects your. And here's the thing: people say that to you, but they don't know your circumstances.
That's right.
And I just say to myself, why do you care? It doesn't affect you. It's not. I'm not asking you to do it.
Right.
So why is it an issue? And I've had people like point and make jokes. It just from seeing me with the mask on, I was like, what's the
Wow.
purpose? What's the use? Because there's mask fatigue, right?
Yes.
It's COVID fatigue, honestly. And
Mhm.
we're still in a pandemic. People are still getting it. There's still different
Mhm.
strains, but
Mhm.
it's lessened. It's not like it was when it first came. And I think that it's interesting to still see that, because
Yeah.
when COVID happened, we also having to figure out how we work from home. Now we're all using Zoom or whatever platform, and
Mhm.
people started to find out what kind of circumstances you lived in, at home. Oh, she
Yep.
takes care of her mother or her father.
Yep.
Because now they were actually in the home, and
Yes.
your caretaker could not come and take care of them while you were at work. You're taking care of them while you're on a phone call for work. Let me go give mom her meds or dad their meds.
Mhm.
Baby.
Mhm.
And people became a little bit more sensitive to your home
Mhm.
situation, but all that went
Mhm.
out the door now. Now,
Yeah.
if you wear it, you're ostracized for protecting others or protecting even
Right.
yourself.
Right.
It's interesting that because Kat, that gentleman he came and got the dog Tammy.
Mhm.
Was a senior, and every
Mhm.
time he comes in, whenever I see him, he has a mask on. So I never say
Mhm.
nothing to him. But he
Mhm.
came and pick up Tammy on Monday. He has his mask on, and he was saying something. He couldn't say. So he just lift the mask up, and he said to me, "I got to wear this because my immune system is compromised."
Mhm.
I never asked him, but he just felt. I was, I'm cool with him. I'm like cool with everybody. I'm just like, hey.
Mhm.
So he felt nice. He felt comfortable enough to tell me why he was wearing the mask. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. I knew something was up because the way he was walking, he didn't look 100% balance. And
Mhm.
then when he told that to me on Monday, I was like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
cool.
But yeah, Dr. Motley, I know you were trying to say something before you started having some technology challenges.
I don't even remember what it was, but I know that we are starting to see a rise. Well, we have been seeing a rise in COVID cases over the last few weeks, and so, um, we are definitely not out of the woods. Just like it was said, thank God, a lot of us have already had COVID or have had some form of protection.
Mhm.
So we hopefully won't experience severe cases of COVID.
Mhm.
But the virus is always changing because the virus wants to win. The way
Mhm.
that the virus wins is to change its mask and to do a little manipulation and look a little different and try to, outsmart our immune system,
Mhm.
outsmart the vaccine and get around it. And
Mhm.
so you just have to remember that we will need to get periodic vaccines. We don't know how often it will be. Right now, I guess it's looking like it's annual. I know that they are preparing for a fall vaccine, but for some people who are high risk, who haven't had a vaccine, who haven't had the vaccine in 6 months, if you're over the age of 65, you have diabetes, heart disease, lung issues, weak immune system, you're at high risk of dying from COVID. If you haven't had the vaccine in the last 6 months, you may want to consider getting it now, and then you'll get another one in the fall or winter once enough time has passed between the doses. Because we are seeing cases start to rise. I spoke to several people this week who either have COVID or know someone with COVID or was
Yeah.
exposed to COVID. I know
Yeah.
there's a camp in the area that had an outbreak. A bunch of kids have COVID right now.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah. You see here, Deirdre said, she said, I just had COVID and went to the ER and no one had on masks, especially the doctors and the nurses.
yeah,
I'm an
and I
ER
think
nurse. I would have had my mask on. I'm
I
nasty.
was
Okay.
going to say,
I
yeah.
had it on. But no, I believe you, because my husband, I think it was last year, he caught COVID from traveling.
Mhm.
And he said, I don't know, I think it is. I took him to the ER, and he was really down and out, and they didn't have a mask on. And
Mhm.
they were like, oh, we're gonna treat you for X. And it was like some kind of virus, but it was
Mhm.
nothing like COVID. We'll just send you home with this. And I was like, so you aren't going to test him for COVID? We think it's a possibility it's COVID. He did travel. And
Mhm.
no, that's kind of died down. I don't
Mhm.
believe the ER doctor said that. And he said, no, it's kind of died down. No, I don't think it's that. He said, but if you want it, we will. And I was just like, yeah, test him. The test hospital the results don't come back for days.
Oh, okay.
I was just like, okay, this is interesting. We could have used one of the CVS box
Yeah.
things
Mm-hmm.
home. And then, do you know they sent him home with medication for whatever they thought it was?
Mm-mm.
And when he came home, I said, let me just test you. And he was positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, we should have just stayed home and just wrote it out. We never went back because we were like, this is something that
Wow.
we just determined at home.
So
Wow.
I had my daughter was sick last fall, and we took her to urgent care, and she had cold flu symptoms. So I'm like, "Are you going to test for COVID?" They said no, but you can go home and test her.
Oh,
I was
Wow.
like, "What? Like this is like." So they just completely changed the protocols for how
Yeah.
they're testing and who they're testing and why they
mm.
testing, and I don't know exactly why. She didn't have COVID, but I was just clutching my pearls when they told me to go home and test her for COVID. I'm like, but I'm here. Like, you're
Yeah.
a
That's
medical
amazing.
establishment.
Because they know they can send you home to do it with a box
That's
test.
it.
Now that they have a better understanding of COVID, even though they're
Mhm.
very strains, what happens is it's better to send you home and leave an open bed or whatever for
Mhm.
a true emergency, trauma
Mhm.
or something
Yeah.
else. It's back
Mm.
to normal.
Yeah.
That's
They
Yeah.
ridiculous.
normalized COVID now, you know?
It definitely has. Unfortunately, as we know, it still attacks everybody differently. And we just had someone go to the hospital a couple weeks ago for the same thing. It turned out it was COVID, and it was, are they going to keep her, and what are they going to put her on, or is she going to be able to go home? Versus other people who it impacts them not as severely, but nonetheless, right? The transference is what becomes the
Mhm.
concern, because I started to run to the hospital when we didn't know what it was. And then when it turned out it was COVID, I was like, I can't come because I got this one over here at home, you know. So, all right, Dr. Ramontal, you mentioned some vaccines need various, I guess, administrations and
Doses, like, yeah,
doses. Yes,
multiple
thank you.
doses.
And
Hmm.
what are some of those? I was trying to remember. I know when I went to Ghana, I definitely had to get yellow fever, and I'm trying to remember if that was one or two. But to your point, I had to get that, and I had to do something with malaria, and I had to do one other thing. But they had to be done in a certain amount of
Yeah.
space of each other, and it was a quick turnaround for me. I got the call in September, and I needed to leave October 20th. And we weren't sure if I was going to make it in that window in
Mhm.
order to get everything in my system so that I could go. And so when you mentioned that earlier, as far as making sure people are not only checking what vaccines are needed to travel to different places, but also how far in advance and how many doses do they
Yeah.
need to get.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with every single one of them because there's so many
Of
depending
course.
on where you're going, right? But
Yeah.
obviously, getting vaccinated against infectious diseases is one of the most effective ways to protect your health while you're traveling abroad. And I know that the World Health Organization, who they published that list of vaccines, even as they update it regularly, and it was actually updated in July this year. And according to the CDC, most travel vaccines should be administered at least 1 month before departure to ensure maximum protection.
Mm,
But then also,
mm-hmm.
if you have a series, you want to make sure that you're looking even beyond that. That's why I say, as soon as you know where you're going, you should go and check out what's required or recommended for that location, because
Yes.
it can be a series of things. I know in some places they have 20 plus. Another thing to think about is, if it's something that you may not have had before, think about asking about combination travel vaccines.
Mm,
There's the vaccine to prevent diphtheria, tetanus, toxoids, pertussis, and polio. That's in
mhm.
one administration,
Got
right?
it. Yeah.
Touching on those number of things. So asking about combinations is another good way to even think about your time period as well, because if you can get 3 or 4 in one, that will
Yeah.
help out a great deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I would warn, and this is regardless of time, is thinking about travel vaccine drug interactions. So whenever a new medication is prescribed, at least in the US, the CDC says to check for your known possible drug interactions, and then you inform the traveler of any potential serious health
Yes.
risks. So
Yes.
if they're already, maybe they hypertensive or they're diabetic or any other issue going on where they take prescribed medication, making sure that they find out what the risks are for any potential drug interactions with those travel related vaccinations that they're looking to take. That's really important. And a lot of people overlook that because all they're thinking about is they're going on a trip. They just need to know what to take so they can hopefully prevent something from happening.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
would
Dr.
even say
Motley.
too that I think almost all the vaccines you're going to get multiple doses. I don't think there's one where you just get one dose. A lot of times when you get the first dose, it's just to activate your immune system, just to wake it up, and you need additional doses to really get the antibodies to kick in and to ramp up and to get the protection you need. So even or it's just that the virus changes and you just need another dose because you need to keep up with the virus like COVID and flu, or it's that you can get a vaccine when you're younger and the immunity or the protection that it offers wears off over time. So you'll still need to get another one later. So I don't think that there's any vaccine where you're just like one and done at this time right now.
And let me say this too about when you're traveling overseas, depending on where you're going, there are certain places that administer certain vaccines. You can't get all vaccines. Like you can't call your primary. They don't have everything. I know when I was getting the yellow fever one, there were only 2 places in the Philadelphia area because one of them wasn't even in Philly. It was about 40 minutes away from where I live, but those were the only 2 places that I could get the yellow fever one. And you needed certain things in order to get it. So I needed to have my airplane ticket. I needed to have my passport. And when I showed up, I think the first time, I'm trying to remember, I didn't have something. It might have been the visa hadn't come back. Like it was something. And I was like, son of a gun, really? Y'all not going to let me? And it was like, nope, you got to have everything. And so again, there was that window where it just happened so fast. It was an unexpected trip. I was asked to teach for 2 months. So it was just trying to get everything in order. But they were very mindful of the fact that I had a small window. So they actually were able to squeeze me in so that I would be able to do it. So we have to make sure that when you are going to travel overseas, take a look. I mean, Google is a wonderful tool. You can see what is needed, when it's needed, how far in advance, how much it costs.
Yeah.
Because I probably spent close to $1,000 just on vaccines to be able to go. And I remember Edmund, he was like, what? I think it was about $800 and some dollars for everything to ensure that I would be able to go and be healthy and feel comfortable and confident when I was over there that my health would be fine, because the last thing I want to do is try to find medical care when I go anywhere. But thank goodness for people such as Dr. Ramontal, which helps, make those things more, what's the word that I want? More realistic. That's why I really appreciate the work that you do, because it makes the world seem accessible.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we go over, it's just like, I'm only thinking, okay, all my health services, my primary care physician is in Philadelphia. I'm not trying to go anywhere else because I don't know y'all system like that. I don't know your capabilities. But from listening to you and watching your shows on YouTube, it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't feel so, nervous about going to Colombia if something happens medically. Maybe I will be okay, or I'm more open to try. Go ahead, Dr. Ramontal.
Yeah, I was going to say you touched on the three things, the three reasons why people even decide to seek healthcare abroad. I call it the three A's,
Mhm.
but affordability, that's usually number one, accessibility, and availability. So you talking about, oh, only two locations had that particular vaccine. Okay, maybe only two locations have it. Can you get to that location? How quickly can you
Right.
get it? How do you need an appointment? How early
Yep.
can you have it?
Yep.
But then availability, maybe those two have it, but maybe they're short,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
those are a lot of the reasons why people decide to travel abroad for healthcare, because one, they can't get in,
Mhm.
or they can't get the type of care that they deserve.
Yeah.
And then affordability is a huge issue here in the United States. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
There's no reason that the same or even better, equivalent or even better healthcare is available to you in so many places outside of the US,
Mhm.
for a fraction of the cost. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And let me say this too, when you are traveling, if there are certain vaccines, immunizations that you need when you're going overseas, you have to take proof of that with you, that
Yeah,
you had them. So, like my yellow fever card, and I forget how long it's good for. I think I'm expired at this point, but they checked it in my passport the same way they checked for the visa and everything else. So, don't get it and be like, oh, I got it done and not have the paperwork to prove it. You have to
there's
have it with you.
now. Yeah, there's a lot of certificates. I know in the US, a lot of times they keep track on a card, and depending on
Mm-hmm.
where you are, they'll put a sticker of the name of the facility and all that, and then just write down what it is and the date you took it and any series. But
Mm-hmm.
there's travel certificates now that are actually issued to people who are known going, and they have exactly what you took, when you took it, and all of that, and you can present the certificate in the same way you would like present your passport.
Yeah. Yeah. Brother Mojo, go ahead. What's going through your mind?
I'm just listening to what you're talking about. I think this is a good topic for those people who like to travel. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people that like to travel, and sometimes the last thing we think about is what is required, other than your visa for that country. For
Yeah.
I have a very good friend, and she was going to go to Japan, and she couldn't go because she didn't have a visa because she wasn't a U.S. citizen.
Mm-hmm.
She's a resident of the United States. So when she found out she couldn't go, she ended up going somewhere else. But it never crossed her mind to see what was required, what paperwork she needed to travel to Japan, which I didn't notice myself until she said, "I'm a U.S. citizen," so it never crossed my mind about that. But
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know she was. I didn't realize she was just a resident. So when she went to I guess whatever happened at that point where she decided she was going to go, where she's buying her ticket or whatever, they asked her for her identifications, and when she showed her passport, it wasn't a U.S. passport, and they said, "Well, oh, you need to have you need a visa because of you're not a U.S. citizen. You're a citizen of another country, and that country doesn't have that connection with us like that."
Mm-hmm.
So as we're talking about immunization and stuff like that, I think we need to just put that on our checklist. If
Yeah.
you are thinking about traveling, you're looking to travel next year, or you're looking to finish something here, just check the country you're going to. Because,
Mm-hmm.
based on being a U.S. citizen or not being a U.S. citizen, there might be requirements because of the country you're coming from. They
Mm-hmm.
said, because you're a U.S. citizen, we know this is okay, but because you're from that country, you need this and you need that, you from that country. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need to you have to make sure that's something you should just make sure. If you're thinking about traveling overseas, that's something else on your checklist. Like,
Yeah.
Dr. Ramontal talked about, it's definitely should put on your checklist, because if you are not a U.S. citizen, certain countries will ask you for different paperwork
Yeah.
on top of
Yeah.
a visa. And you should be mindful of that.
Dr. Motley,
Oh yeah.
no, go ahead. What do you to say?
I was going to ask you, how did you know which vaccines you had to get? Because I'm just wondering, when people are traveling to countries that require vaccines before you go, how do you know?
Yeah. So for me, thank God the university that asked me to come over and teach gave me a list of
I
everything
see.
that was required. And then, of course, I cross checked it with what was on the internet. And so,
Yeah,
What was on the
CDC
internet?
CDC publishes it.
Yeah.
yeah,
CDC
So
publishes it and updates it based on whatever country and region in the
yeah.
country. You're
And
because
also,
telling.
Yes, but I'm just
it'll
wondering,
tell
how do
you what's
people know?
recommended. It will tell you what's recommended. It will tell you
Yes.
what's highly suggested. It'll tell,
Mhm.
right. It'll give you the
Required.
breakdown what's required.
Hmm.
Exactly.
and also
Exactly.
the
But I'm just
also the
thinking of people
embassies.
that just
Regularly.
travel and just, well, or people who don't travel regularly and they just,
Mhm.
Gotcha.
and they just want to go somewhere. How do they know? Like, what triggers them to say, I need to think about getting a vaccine? Like, how
I
would it
don't
even
even
come
think
up?
they do. I don't
Yeah.
that
Uh,
it's not a thought. I think people are literally thinking I'm going to have a good experience, and if they don't travel often, it's like, oh wow, I finally get to go somewhere. I'm looking forward
Mhm.
to sights and this kind of thing. They're
Yeah.
not
mhm.
thinking about vaccines. No
Yeah.
way.
I
And
think
so,
one thing we should, as people are listening, since I used to work for the government, is that if you are traveling to any country, just check in with the U.S. embassy for that country or the
mm,
embassy for that country. They'll tell you, especially the U.S. embassy for that country. Say like if you're going to whatever country X, Y, Z, the U.S. embassy they will tell you they'll tell you what you need to enter
yeah.
that country.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. Just like your elected officials. Your elected officials there for certain things. So I mean, you have to put yeah, getting a ticket and being excited about going is one thing, but when I work for the government, it's like if you were traveling outside the U.S. or any country with work, you need to just check in with the U.S. embassy, whatever country you're going to. Just let them know you're there because if something happened, they need to know how many U.S. citizens are in that country. Because if you ever watch the news, they say, "Well, we know so many U.S. citizens," and they say, "How do they know how many citizens are there?" Because you checked in
Hmm.
with the embassy. It's a very simple procedure. Just to let the embassy know that you're in that country, and then simple procedures like what vaccinations do I need to be in this to travel to this country, and they'll tell you
Hmm.
very easily.
That's a
So
good idea. And as Dr. Ramontal mentioned, just going to the Center for Disease
mhm.
Control, the CDC, look and see what's there as well. And I think it should become a part of something that we habitually do. We know we got our ticket, right? We know we got, in my case, you got caregiver coverage, whether it's for your dog, your cat, or a family member. And make sure you check to see what vaccines might be needed. And side note, I mentioned dog and cat and animals in jest, but the reality is they have to get vaccines too.
It's true. It's true.
All
It's
right.
really
They had
true.
literally, while we were on here, somebody was texting me saying, "We want to bring our dog to your care center for boarding." And I sent them right back. They have to have 3 vaccines. I said, "Y'all are timely,
Uh,
right? They have to get their distemper, they have to get their rabies, and they have to get their bordetella. And other facilities require other things, but these are vaccines that our animals are required to have on a yearly basis. So, and people will, all this, many times people come in and they're trying to figure out what's wrong with their animal, and it's because their immune system hasn't been built up. When we talk about puppies, puppies have a puppy series. They need 4 rounds in order to build their immune system, just like a baby needs their vaccines to build their immune system. And some people, just like with children, opt not to get vaccines for their fur babies, but it leaves them exposed to a greater risk of things. And a lot of times people say, well, my animal doesn't go outside, but you do. And so you
oh yeah.
track things
You
in
do.
the house, right? And here's the other thing, outside, the things that are outside still manage to come inside many times, right? I'm
All the
talking about
time.
spiders, I'm talking about ants, I'm talking about bees, I'm talking about all types of things that end up
Toxins,
tracking
just
right,
toxins.
the air, right, all
Yeah.
types of things. And
Yeah,
so we want to protect ourselves and those that we love as much as possible. Go ahead, Brother Moja.
no, I'm glad that you said that with we're talking about vaccinations and we have to be very mindful that if you have animals in your house,
Mm-hmm.
you need to protect them because you're protecting yourself and you have
Yeah.
someone in the house who have a compromised immune system because I told this gentleman he was coming, he said, "Oh yeah." I said, "But do you walk outside in water? Do you walk in the rain?" I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah." I said, "Guess what? The rain, washes things that wild animals probably, urinated and you're walking
Mm-hmm.
in what you think that's rain, but that's mixed water. You come inside, what does your dogs do and your cats? Most of your dogs, they lick your shoes.
Yep.
right? And so now you're exposing them to that. And so I said, you're bringing things into the house. Don't worry about them not going out. You're bringing things into the
Yeah.
house. And so a lot of times we don't stop and think about that. But if you do have animals, you do need to, same thing like us, you need to vaccinate most of the animals because the way the animals know, their paws are on the ground, they roll around in the grass, they do all kinds,
Hmm.
and then they come in and they jump on your bed,
That's right.
jump on your chair.
That's right.
So I mean, so you talk about vaccinations. The vaccinations for us is very important, but also you got to protect your animals because the animals can give you something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Real talk. All right, Dr. Motley, I know you always got stuff on the horizon. What events do you have that people need to know about, and how do people get into contact with you and follow what you're doing?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
The event that we actually have coming up is for healthcare providers, but anyone is welcome. It is to help healthcare providers who engage, treat patients that come from marginalized communities. So we're talking about topics including allyship,
Mm.
the social determinants of health, trauma informed care, microaggressions. Dr. Walls is hitting the main stage with a vulnerability for healthcare providers. So it's going to be a really nice day. We're offering continuing education for a number of healthcare providers. So that's coming up September 19th at the Inn at Villanova University.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to healtheducatedinc.org for more information about that.
Fantastic. And just real quick before you go, is there an announcement about a role or something that has been bestowed upon you that's able to be made this evening?
Oh, I mean, I got a whole new job. I got a whole new
Uh-huh.
job. So I'm
Uh-huh.
now with the Bureau of Health for
Mm-hmm.
the city of Chester,
Mm-hmm.
overseeing their public health initiatives. So I'm really honored to have the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to support my people.
Mm-hmm. Your hometown.
Well,
Congratulations.
Oh,
congratulations.
Yes,
tambourine!
you know.
Yay! Double time.
No,
Thanks,
but
y'all.
we're
Thank
we're
you.
laughing, we're smiling, we're really, but on the other side, I think you getting that position is very important because it
Mm-hmm.
shows young black girls that was attainable, and
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
so we have to
absolutely.
think about that because there are some little young black girls you're gonna walk by and someone's gonna say that's who's in charge, and they're gonna look at you and say
Mm-hmm.
she looks like me, and if
Mm-hmm.
she could do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
All these things are very
Absolutely.
important. All these things.
Representation
Absolutely.
matters.
So,
Thank you.
Yes, it does. And this is your
Absolutely.
hometown. I mean, this is
It
where
It
you,
is.
is.
and so it is. And the thing about it, and I'm gonna just take a moment and raise you up. Um, you do the work anyway, right? You
Yeah.
do the work not for the claim and fame of it. You do the work because it needs to be done. And so when you told me about this appointment, this new role, it was so powerful because it's like you being acknowledged for what you're already doing. And I think that's so
Hmm.
important. And so many times people, one, don't give back to where they come from. And you saw the need and you are doing something about it. And that is one of the reasons why I just support you whenever I can support you, whenever you put that call out
You
to
always
ask.
do.
But
You always do. Thank you. Listen, I'm just doing the Lord's work, really, because Lord knows He know I really don't want to do nothing. I'd rather just sit home and just chill and watch TV, but I don't get a chance to do any of that because He just keep me busy. He like, I need to keep you busy because I know you could get in some trouble. So let me keep
uh,
you busy. It's just me doing what He tell me to do. I'm just obedient. Is what I am.
very
I
oh,
am
good. Very
so
obedient to
good.
the Lord, and that's all. I just have to give Him all the
are
praise
you
and all
are
the
you
honor.
are you trying to tell us you're the 21st century Jeremiah?
I ain't that good.
And he had to start somewhere too. So hey,
Deirdre says
He sure
congratulations
did.
to you, Dr.
Oh,
Motley.
thank you, Deidre. Thank you. I'm
All
honored.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So y'all be sure to check her out. She does great work. She also does a blood pressure clinic, right, on Saturdays. Is that
Yeah,
every
we
Saturday or certain times?
we just completed our first cohort, so we'll start another one or two this fall. So we'll be getting that started soon.
Okay.
So
All
stay
right. So
tuned.
yeah, be sure to follow her. Stay tuned. And on Instagram, what's your handle?
At Doc is on the ball. Doc is on the ball. I
Okay.
had to think about it.
Yeah.
It's like, who
Yeah.
am I? I don't know who I
All right. Well, speaking of who sang "Who Am I"? Was that Beanie Man? Ain't he Jamaican?
am. There we go.
So we're gonna go to the Jamaican herself,
Oh
Dr.
my
Natasha
goodness.
Ramontal.
That was a good one.
That was good.
Yeah, you
She
can
always
reach
ready.
me. Well, first of all, congratulations, Dr. Motley, because I
Oh,
think you're
thank you,
doing
Dr.
amazing
Ramontal.
work. So well deserved and so much more. I
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best with the new position.
Thank
Um,
you.
for me, you guys can find me on YouTube at Medical Tourism RN 812, and on every platform: LinkedIn, IG, TikTok, and Instagram. Oh no, I said
Mhm.
Instagram. Anything else as Medical Tourism RN, and I just give a lot of information on what people should be looking for and what they should be sharing with whoever it is they choose to see outside of the U.S. If they choose to seek care abroad, you know, a lot of people do not look like us, and if they don't look like you can't guarantee that they have come in contact with a lot of scenarios that you may have or have experienced. So I want to make sure that Black women in particular are educated on a number of things and bring a lot of that information to light to those that they are going to seek care from. So
Fantastic. All right,
thank
Brother
you.
Moja,
Sure.
what you got going on? What's coming up next on your end and UCCI and all of the goodies?
No, well, I want to thank all the people who have supported the web series Kadaga.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we put the series together, it was about, for me, the roots of the series was about me honoring Black women. And that's why it's about women of color of African descent coming together globally to fight human trafficking. Now we do respect other women. We have other women that's coming in different segments of the series, but I wanted Black women to look at that, and young Black girls to look at it and see how globally we can work together. Even though we're different cultures, different languages, and religion, we could come together. We could do things together. And so I want to thank everyone who has supported the project. We are getting ready to start shooting our fourth season soon. But thank you all so
Wow.
much. And you can check out the first three seasons are on the YouTube channel UCCN TV.
Mm-hmm.
You could check it out. You can give us all your feedback because Dr. Walls is the lead character, and let's be very clear: the 95%, no, 98% of the people in the series are not actors, but they love acting. Okay,
Mm.
so we had only two SAG actors in the series,
Mm-hmm.
and they were in the second season. They wasn't in the third season. So all the people you see there, people who like to act but who are
Had an
not actors
interest.
and come had an
Mm-hmm.
interest and came out. So it's using the talents in our community, and all the actors, their characters is based around their vocation,
Mm-hmm.
something in their vocation that makes it easier for them to digest
And
the
connect
script.
with.
Yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
just want to thank everyone for supporting the project.
And now he's
Awesome.
humble in his in what he does. I guess this is shout out Thursday. So Brother Emoja connects with people all over the globe to participate in this web series. We currently are working with, are we at 13 countries?
We got two new countries in Africa. Yeah.
Right. So 13 countries, and
Wow.
out of those 13 countries, I want to say 8 of them, I believe, are in Africa,
Yeah.
and then the others are in the Caribbean. And in the
Caribbean.
United States, we work with people from, I believe it's 11 different states, 10 or 11 different states. So he is incorporating and really employing, because everybody gets something. Um, uh, Actors, actresses, and filmmakers. So even people to go out and do the videography and so forth, and voiceovers, because there's some people who are like, no, I don't want to be on screen, but I want to do something. So it really has turned into a global initiative. And as he mentioned, these are people who may have always said, I had an interest in acting, but I didn't know if I could do it. And this is a safe space in order to try and and practice, and let's get your toes wet in it. So it's very interesting. He writes the scripts himself. He is the sole writer, and then he
Wow.
is also the sole editor. So he takes all of them and puts them together to create this web
Yeah.
series. Yes.
Yeah. My wife is the supervisor on the script because as much as I love English, I am not an English professor like her. So she goes over my script with a red pen. It's like I'm
As
back in
every
high school.
wife should. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much.
You know,
Amen.
but truthfully, I just want to thank everyone because we do a lot.
Wow.
Like Dr. Motley, you do a lot. Dr. Ramontal, you do a lot. And if
Mhm.
we, in the spirit of Ujima Collective Working Responsibly, come together, I truly believe our young people will see more positive things to do with their God-given talents.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
if we motivate them, I think in the end, the community will be much better.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
I think. Yes.
Absolutely. Amen.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you to those who have joined us on live as well in the audience and chiming in. And of course, thank you, Dr. Motley and Dr. Ramontal and Brother Moja. And, we had a great discussion. If you didn't see it, be sure to check the replay. Be sure to send it with people, share it with people as well. Also, please be sure to subscribe to all of our channels. We need the support in order to keep going. And please also check out my Froggy Tea and Bunny channel on YouTube, where you can hear some stories from Froggy Tea and Bunny being read. And also, I started creating some soundscapes, meditation, music, and visualizations. So, just for calming yourself, children, animals, and so forth. So, be sure to check that out as well. And as always, subscribe to Ask Dr. Walls 525. And until we meet again, Brother Emoji and I will be back, let's see, on the third Thursday for Stronger Together. And next Wednesday, Brian, financial wealth therapist, Brian Brogan, and I will be doing our monthly family and finance on Wealth Wednesday at noon. So be sure to check us out then. All right, y'all. So as always, God bless and continue to live your greatest life. And we'll see you soon. Good night,
See
everyone.
ya.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you.